Hello everyone, welcome to this edition of Coaching Conversations. I'd like you to welcome my guest Sarah Davison. Morning Sarah.
Good morning Amantha, lovely to be here.
Oh, great to have you. We've been banking you for a little while now. So let me introduce Sarah to you. Sarah has an interesting title. Sarah describes herself as having migrated from being a coaching homeopath to actually a natural menopause expert with coaching. So can you tell me what's the difference? Because you know I'm a massive fan about anything menopause. So tell me why the change?
So actually, being a homeopath on natural menopause actually is like the fourth evolution of me.
Okay.
Third was the coaching homeopath. Before that, I was a consultant in innovation and creativity for corporates. And when I was towards the end of that, and before that I was in sales, but we won't even go there, it's so long ago. But when I was working as an innovation consultant, I now know with hindsight that I went into perimenopause with a bang, a crash. And I didn't know what it was at the time. But it was that crisis that actually led me to become a homeopath. So then I worked as a homeopath and as a coach because I'd learned the coaching when I was a consultant. I'd done NLP and synectics coaching, all sorts of stuff. And so then I was working and going through perimenopause, not knowing what it was. That crisis led me to become to retrain as a homeopath. And then as I really then realized that I was in menopause, I started learning much more about it. And then I started to attract women, of course, as you do in this kind of job, attracted women in the same space as me. So I got so into it with, seeing my own homeopath and seeing all the other women as my clients, that I began to really get very knowledgeable and get kind of specialize in it. So I am, if you like, I'm the natural menopause expert with coaching homeopath inside, like Intel inside.
Yeah. Okay. Great description, because you really cannot do one without the other. And I know we've talked before, haven't we? And it's definitely a personal interest for me, and it's an avenue I'm going down, because I have found, probably like you, Sarah, you can't, especially with women and men, I would say, I have coached many men actually who talk about the complexities of the situation that their wives are going through and the impact on the family and the wider circle. You can't have those conversations without touching on it. And I think it's even more helpful if people think, actually, yes, actually, you can help me with that as well.
Absolutely. So beyond my kind of medical homeopathic expertise, I find that the coaching is so incredibly helpful for exactly that, because my specialist area of coaching is relationships, not just love relationships, any kind of relationship. And the thing that comes up for women in menopause is their no. Whenever there's been a problem with boundaries, which there are for many women, because that's kind of how I was socialized, in perimenopause, it comes up, and those boundary issues, and then it kind of puts the Bunsen burner up under relationships that aren't as healthy as they could be. So I use a lot of my homeopathic medicines can help change that dynamic, but it's great to be able to give women some processes and some insights into their relationships.
Brilliant. So I think it would be really helpful. I mean, I love everything alternative. I mean, bring it on. I honestly, it's ironic. There's an irony there, because having spent so long in the pharmaceutical industry, you'd think I wouldn't be like that, but I really am. And I've embraced Reiki, homeopathy. I remember being really quite desperate, actually, with my daughter, who had the most awful colic when she was a little baby, and I just tried everything, as you do in those dark hours. You'll consider anything, won't you? And homeopathy was something I'd never tried. I read up about it and I thought, wow, do you know what, in for a penny, in for a pound, I've got nothing to lose. And actually it was really helpful. But for people who, and let's use the word skeptical, because I think sometimes there are those attitudes. What is homeopathy in as simplistic a manner as you could explain? What is homeopathy?
Okay, so I'm going to start with what it's not.
Great.
Because many people think that homeopathy is kind of herbal supplements and diet and that kind of thing. And it's not that. A homeopath has some knowledge of that and will look at what your diet's like, but it's a system of medicine in its own right, and it's the second most widely used system of medicine in the world. They estimate about 400 million people use it after conventional medicine. And the way it works is that it stimulates your own self-healing system, which we all have, this big homeostatic mechanism that we are. It triggers your self-healing mechanism where it's got stuck. And the way it does that is that we give a microdose of the substance that if you overdosed on that substance, it would give you symptoms similar to what you have. So it's so to give you an example, one of the symptoms that people get with colds, some people get colds with burning watery eyes. That's the same as the symptoms you get from chopping an onion. So we put onion in what's called potency. So it's a particular way we treat it. It's not just diluted. There's another process that goes on. And that minuscule amount of onion triggers the body to actually heal the symptom. So it's the same principle as vaccination.
Right.
It triggers the system to heal itself, and our self-healing mechanism gets stuck for many different reasons, emotional and physical.
Yeah, so really interesting. What are the origins of homeopathy? Where did it originate from?
So it originated with a guy called Samuel Hahnemann, who was born in 1755, and he himself was a doctor, but he was a very experienced doctor, but he left doctoring in the world of medicine because he absolutely he was disgusted with how toxic the forms of medicine were that he was having to use. I have to say not much has changed, but anyway. So he then just went, and he also spoke 8 languages and was a pharmacologist, and so he then started to do medical translation. And one day he was translating something about cinchona bark, which is what we derive quinine from.
Okay.
And it said quinine heals, or cinchona heals malaria because it's astringent and bitter. That's how they used to think in those days. And he was thinking, well, there are lots of things that are astringent and bitter. Why would cinchona bark heal it and other medicines not, that are astringent? So what he did an experiment, and this was the brilliant thing about him. So he experimented on himself and his family, his wife and children, and he decided as a healthy person to take cinchona bark, a lot of it, and what he noticed was it gave him symptoms similar to malaria. Right. So he thought, what if I dilute this to take out the toxicity and give it to people with malaria? And what he found was that the dilution factor made it gentle, more effective, and really, gave a great healing. So he started then looking at all sorts of other substances of what they did, and they still discover new homeopathic remedies this way. They give the remedy to people who don't know what it is. And when you take a homeopathic remedy for long enough, it gives you symptoms of what it's supposed to cure. So everybody writes their diary, and then they compare. And they say, oh, look, everybody is having a right-sided headache, or everybody is having a sore throat. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So part of my brain's going, yeah, but isn't that the thing you're trying to avoid then? So how does homeopathy remove that then? So if it's presenting those symptoms that you would have, how does it actually cure you, for want of a better word?
Well, because if you have those symptoms as a homeopath, what you do is you find a substance that would give similar symptoms. So in malaria, China, which is cinchona, if you take too much of it,
yes,
you malarial symptoms. But in potency, in dilution, it helps the body heal it. So like the vaccination, it just gives the immune system a kick up the backside, basically.
Yeah, it goes, here you go, signpost, you need to switch on and deal with that thing.
This is what you're trying to deal with.
Yeah, it's like an email in your inbox, isn't it, that reminds you that, right, you need to be doing that thing. Exactly. Okay, that's a really clear explanation, and that's the thing, because actually of all the alternative medicines, I think acupuncture and homeopathy are becoming embraced more by, let's call it Western medicine, Western medicine.
Western population.
Yeah, modern medicine, as opposed to Eastern ancient medicine, which by the way, is fabulous, and we should never underestimate that. And particularly at this time of year. And I know I hadn't asked you this, but is there a particular thing that people present with or is useful at this time of year? I know in Chinese medicine they talk about very much the energy flow and conserving and really almost going into hibernation, like we see the animals and the trees doing, and conserving energy. Is there anything around this sort of time that homeopathy is really helpful for?
It's a good question, because the thing that's really different about homeopathy is that it's 150%, not just 100%, 150% customized and individualized to the person.
Right.
So there are some people who will find the transition into autumn difficult. They always get colds, or they get depressed, or there are certain remedies, not all remedies, that will be good for that. But okay, so let's go to menopause. 551 remedies for hot flushes.
Wow.
Yes. So as the homeopath, you have to work out all the rest of it, because it's a very holistic way of working. So you work out, what is this person like in terms of physically? Are they a hot person, cold person, thirsty person, etc.? What are they like emotionally? Are they quite, with their menopause, do they get teary or rage, or all those things will help the homeopath narrow it down to 2 or 3 remedies that are right for them.
And so how long I'm imagining the type of client that you're seeing, because of the niche of your business, is actually more women, perimenopausal, menopausal.
Yes.
I mean, how long would you be on average treating them for? Is it a lifelong thing, or is it a short burst? How does it work?
Absolutely depends. So if you are just someone who wants to get rid of the presenting symptoms, all the people that I've treated, it seems to me that it's a minimum of 6 months. And most people seem to sign off with it, within 6 months. But it so depends on what's in their history and how far back this goes. I am treating a woman for perimenopause at the moment. And she was presenting with, not just perimenopausal rage, but rage month. And when we track back, because the homeopath will go all through your history and look at your ancestral stuff, what we discovered was that this premenstrual anger and the headaches had started after 2 courses of rowacatine, which is a very heavy drug that you give for acne. And it had really overloaded her liver. And if your liver's in not good condition when you come into menopause, you can get difficult symptoms. So I just started by giving her some liver clearing. She broke out in a rash, which for homeopath is a good thing because it shows the liver's discharging. That was gone in 3 or 4 days. And she said, I just feel like a different person. And that was just the start.
That's fascinating. Well, I'm completely hooked. Every time I go and see my acupuncturist, and Marilyn Richards, kudos, she's my acupuncturist. She's been seeing me for about 15 years. She's a lady in North Devon, but she is always telling me how stuck my liver is and how much heat comes out the minute she sticks needles in me, the heat dispersal. And it's running along the same energy meridians and things, isn't it? It's using those systems within us, isn't it?
I have a big respect for Chinese medicine, and we had a little bit of training in it when I did my degree. And what I really like it for is understanding, for instance, that, the liver and the eyes are connected, and the liver, the kidneys and the ears are connected. And so it helps me narrow down remedies, because if I think, okay, so this person's got, a liver issue and some eye issues. So I need to find the remedies that have the liver affinity and the eye affinity, not, so it's
almost like you're a locksmith and you've got a chain of keys and you're using your sight to go, well, hang on a minute, no, it's that, and it's not any of those keys, it's these keys, isn't it? That's what it sounds like.
Absolutely. It's also, I think of it as like being a detective. It's like being Sherlock, and that's why I love the job, because I love the problem solving, because you take massive symptoms from someone and you have to work out, which remedy is this pointing to, and you have to take their personality into account as well. So you really have to get to know people.
Yeah, and that's where the coaching element is really helpful as well, isn't it? We
Absolutely.
had another lady on, Eleanor Lawrence, who does cake and coaching. I mean, fabulous. I mean, so I love this the diversity, because I think that's what we need more and more, don't we? We need to have multiple skills, and rather than say, sorry, can only do the menopause symptoms thing, relationships, you're gonna have to get the fact that you can do all of it, Sarah,
Yeah,
is
I totally agree.
amazing.
I
It's
totally
amazing.
agree. And that's why I've put together a natural menopause transformation program that is not just about homeopathy.
Okay.
It's about homeopathy, it's about comprehensive hormone testing. And then I have a nutritionist on the team who does a customized nutritional plan based on your hormonal imbalance. And then I bring in then basically there's a support group, because we need emotional support as well.
Yeah.
Many women, it's going to be a lonely experience. And then I put in teaching from a range of well-being experts around all aspects, around exercise and sexuality and mindset and mindfulness and nutrition. So I think it's, when you come to menopause, you've really got to come at it from a lot of angles.
Definitely. And it's got to be easy, because when you're in that place and time, often you don't have the energy to spend hours drawing. So if you can come to somebody who a bit like the grocer's shop, you can get everything you want and need there, then that's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's I think that's fantastic. So let's learn a little bit more about you, shall we? So obviously this has been a passion, and it's been a maybe not a slow burn, but it's always been within you to get to this point, which is wonderful. Values are really important, and we always talk about values, and more organizations are tuning into the power of values, and how when supported, that's when you really get the best out of people. So when you think about what your values are in relation to work, what do you think are the most important values for you at work?
Yeah, I think the overarching one is that I'm passionate about facilitating others to be the best they can be and to manifest their potential. And I think you'll find that in most healers and coaches and stuff. So it's a fairly generic one. But if you drill down into menopause, it's very much for me about relieving the suffering of menopausal women. And so there's an and for me there, which is about facilitating a woman's, what I see as a rebirth process. Because for me, I mean, menopause gets a really bad rap, and understandably, I think at latest count, I counted 50 symptoms. But that said, do we give labor, as in giving birth, labor, a bad rap? Not so much, because out the other end, we get something amazing, right? And that's what I believe menopause is about. I think it's a transformation process. Everything that you've kicked under the carpet or is not resolved physically or emotionally in menopause comes up to bite you, so you'll resolve it. So I'm very much about transformation for women through menopause, and that they can reframe this as something positive, challenging, but positive.
Yeah, that's really important. I read a really sad article this morning on BBC News about how divorce rates and separation rates in relationships have absolutely skyrocketed.
I'm not surprised.
During COVID, and I think this will come as no surprise to people, but I think it's something to be mindful of. There's only so much sweeping under the carpet you can do. If you have to stay inside with the carpet every day,
under the carpet.
Under the carpet, it tends to seep out, doesn't it? And so the reality is, as we know with anything, but particularly during menopause, unresolved issues will rear their ugly heads, and you are not in the best frame of mind to be dealing with those. So I think you're absolutely right. So I would say to people, people talk about the third age, don't they, for women?
Yes.
And that's quite a nice thing as well. And for us not to be fearful of it, to embrace it. We've had many challenges as a people, and just being women often has been quite challenging, particularly in business. So this is just another challenge, but to see it as a positive and have someone like yourself who guides you and has your best interest at heart. It's not about, here, I'll just do this for you and off you pop. It's we'll keep working together till you're where you want to be and where you feel you're comfortable, is wonderful. And I love the idea of facilitating and transforming, because those are the tenets of coaching, aren't they?
Absolutely. And, you know, on a bigger level, Amantha, something that really stood out for me was something the Dalai Lama said. He said, the change in the world will be led by the women of the West. And so for me, it makes sense. Those women could be all ages, and we can see that, you know, lots more women coming into power, political power. And for me, I think women who are going through, have been through menopause, have a lot to offer because they've had so much experience.
Definitely.
So, and they're also no longer, you know, bothered by high estrogen levels, which make you compliant.
Yes, definitely.
So that's why women after menopause, I did a little bit of a kind of qualitative research study, very tiny one. I talked to women at different stages. And what I heard from the women who were done and dusted from menopause, every single one said some form of, this is the best time of my life. I've never been so happy and fulfilled, and I don't care so much what other people think.
Fascinating, isn't it?
Liberating her.
Really, really, really liberating. Can I just also, I don't know why I just suddenly realised it. I went for my smear yesterday.
Oh.
Right. And I feel now would be a really good time to remind every single lady out there, okay, lockdown or no lockdown, if your smear is due, please go for it. And whether you are perimenopausal, menopausal, if you are eligible for a smear, please go. It'll be the single best thing you ever do. And if you are a guy watching this, please encourage the ladies in your lives to go for their smear. Ask when they had their last one. I'm on a 3 yearly now, but you know, from the age of 25 onwards, and if you've got family histories, it is one of the most curable cancers. And now they're also testing everyone for HPV, the human papilloma virus. So young girls are vaccinated for that, but actually anyone who presents with that will also be treated for it. And that is the single biggest cause of cancers for women. So we need to I just thought I just must give that shout out. And do you know what? It was absolutely fine. No pain. Brilliant. So we must look after one another, right, Sarah? So I thought it was just timely to mention that one. So so tell us, in all of your experience, and you have a breadth and depth of experience, which is wonderful, what's been the best bit of advice that you've ever received that's been really helpful to you?
Well, it's a personal piece of advice that may make you laugh, but when I first met my husband, before I knew he was going to be my husband,
right,
after the second date, first date I was like, oh, amazing. Second date I was like, oh, you know, I'd had a difficult history. That's in a way what enables me to, you know, specialize in relationship coaching, because I've been there and done that and worked my way through it and done psychotherapy and homeopathy and learnt a lot. And after the second date, I was kind of going into my, oh, I'm not sure, you know, and I think there was other stuff going on. Anyway, I was talking to my therapist about him, and he went, Sarah, no, you mustn't do that. Don't back out. I like the sound of this man. Well, here I am, very happily married.
Fabulous. So what was it he was discouraging you to do? What was it he was
thinking? So I think part of the fearful part of me in the second date had picked on some stuff that's like, oh no, that's not perfect.
Right.
We'll do it. That's not perfect. Yeah. Therefore, this is going to be a disaster. Therefore, I'm out of here. And he was, and I was expressing my, you know, my doubts and should I see him again? He was like, no, you see him again.
Yeah, because he's going to bring out your, you know, he's going to assist you in showcasing your strengths, which, you know, is so important, isn't it? That's brilliant advice.
Amazing man. I'm so lucky. He's a psychologist, so we're in the same kind of field.
It's funny, these things, you know, I do believe every single person who's a coach or a facilitator of some sort is bringing that life experience and the benefit of that to their practice, aren't they? You know, whenever I go to a coaching workshop, I just sort of scan the room and I go, everyone here has got something going on, and that's brilliant.
I think it's called the wounded healer.
Yeah, I think so.
You know, can you imagine though, if you hadn't had any wounding, you wouldn't be a very empathetic, you know, person to talk to, would you?
No.
I think the beauty of, you know, certainly the way I work is that occasionally I will put in something that tells the client, actually, you know what, I've been there. and there is an end to it.
Yeah, I think that's really important, because actually, why should people believe us that it's going to be any better? Why should I? You know, you're telling me, but that's not powerful enough, because people have told me stuff and let me down, and you're dealing with all of that, aren't you? But I do think bringing that life story, I am always talking appropriately, of course, with my clients around these things, because I think when you drill it right down, we share a lot of the same complexities in our lives. You know, what keeps me awake at night in some shape or form will be similar to what keeps other people awake at night. It revolves around fear, they revolve around security, they revolve around our values, and those values not being fulfilled, met, or disrespected even. Yeah. So I think that's really, really fantastic advice. So coming back to coaching then, is there anything about coaching or the work that you do that you want to demystify and just get really clear on for people in this conversation?
Well, maybe talking about homeopathy, you know, people think, oh, it's woo-woo, or it's, you know, there's no scientific evidence behind it. You know, this is what the skeptics will tell you. But there is a good small, because there's very little funding for it, but very robust body of evidence, scientific evidence, randomized controlled trials behind homeopathy.
Okay.
So when you read in the media, which more often than not you do, is like, oh, it's rubbish, there's no evidence. It's just not true. No. You know, I can, if people want to email me about it, I will point them to the studies.
Yes, so brilliant.
I think, you know, that is probably the biggest myth I would like to bust, because it's an incredibly effective form of medicine. And not only is it natural, but it has no side effects because of the dilution factor.
Exactly.
Now that doesn't matter. That doesn't mean that it's all plain sailing doing homeopathic treatment. It's not always, because the body has its own wisdom. So take that woman that I helped her detox all the roaccutane. She broke out in a rash and boils. You know, it's not particularly pleasant, but that was because that's what her body needed to do to heal. So anyway,
and that's the part, isn't it? That's the equation. If we're challenging the ignorance or the lack of knowledge, people are looking for a really big result, aren't they? And their negative bias says, well, hang on a minute, I came in for this thing and now I've got some boils. They've instantly, through that ignorance, maybe decided it's not working. And what you're saying is, no, that is working, but we need to be patient.
Absolutely. And, you know, for her, it was, I think she had that rash for about 3 days.
Yeah.
And then she said, quote unquote, I feel like my old self again.
Right.
And that I barely started the program. You know, I was just doing some detoxing. I hadn't got to all the emotional stuff.
No, and that's
the result, no more rage. All her rage went.
Yeah, and then that's the big win, isn't it? You know, no symptoms checker or being, you know, that's not going to appear on the side of a box of conventional tablets, is it? You know, your anger will go, but you know yourself that you feel better. And we talked a bit about, you know, I've got histamine intolerance, so you know, my body is in an inflammatory state, so it's telling me something. It's telling me something. So we need to pay attention to what our bodies are telling us.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that is that's a myth that homeopathy busts, is that the myth is that symptoms are bad. From a homeopath's point of view, a symptom is what the body does to heal itself. And it's only bad when you keep repeating the symptom, because the system can't complete the healing through the symptoms. So a very simple example is a fever. Why do we throw a fever? We throw a fever because our body wants to burn off the infection. So then why would you take a paracetamol?
It's a hard stop on the process, isn't it?
Yeah, I would only give it, because there are plenty of homeopathic remedies for fever, but I only give them when it's not resolving. Yeah. Because for a homeopath to throw a fever, it's a good sign. It's a sign that your vitality is high. Many people just don't throw fevers any longer.
You know, and I can really remember, you know, people say, you know, I can't remember which way it goes around, starve or something, feed a fever, you know, it's about,
starve of feed a cold, starve a fever.
yeah, and it is that, isn't it? You know, if you feel, you know, get wrapped up warm, get that fever out, do whatever you can. Obviously, we're not saying conventional medicine, there's a time and place for that, particularly with children, but what we're saying is actually maybe if we get a little bit more internal with it all and understand what is it.
And look for the underlying cause as well. I think that's where mainstream medicine doesn't always go. You know, I had a woman who was having postmenopausal symptoms quite bad, and I asked the typical homeopathic question of, you know, when did these symptoms start, expecting her to say when I hit menopause, and she said, no, it just got worse in menopause, but I've had symptoms more or less like this for 20 years, ever since my husband died.
Right.
So that woman was suffering from unresolved grief. And that was all part of her, what we call homeopathic picture, and would dictate what, you know, the remedy, because there are remedies, for instance, you know, big menopausal remedies that have grief in them as well. You know, that can be part of the reason that you prescribe, is that the person has a history of unresolved grief.
Well, that's so true. It's like even yesterday I was with a client and we were talking about like Gestalt theory, which is seeds, and literally saying, well, I know you feel like this today, but actually today is not the sum cause of the intensity of those feelings. It's when you pick up this end of the chain, the rest of the chain picks up. It's all of those events around that. And so that's what we're talking about here, isn't it? It's all those life events that maybe we don't connect the dots.
Yes.
But your mind-body connection has done that for you, by the way, and you're the last person to know. So it's about paying attention. So that is absolutely brilliant. So let's imagine. Let's know a little bit more about you then. So then, if you were gonna invite some really cool people around to be in your space with you to help energize you, who would you have invited into your space and
who
why?
would I have for dinner, for instance?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think the most energizing person that I would love to meet and have around me is the Dalai Lama.
Fabulous.
Because he's always laughing, and what really made such an impression on me about him was about, God, it must be about 30 years ago now. I went to see him speak at Wembley Arena. So how many people do you get in Wembley Arena? Thousands, right?
Yeah.
And the topic of the talk was forgiveness. So anyway, he came in, huge applause, everybody standing up, you know, the applause went on and on and on. And then everybody sat down, and then it was quiet, and we were waiting. And then we were waiting for some more. And then we were waiting some more. And then, you know, the silence went on and on and on. I was thinking, what on earth is going on here? And then a peal of laughter came out of Dalai Lama, and he said, well, somebody remind me what I'm supposed to be talking about.
That is fabulous.
And, you know, for me, as someone who is quite driven, who sets myself quite high standards, who can give myself quite a hard time, you know, that I need that around. And he said something else, which was something about somebody asked him, what's the purpose of life? And he said, well, to be happy, of course. You know, like it was the most obvious thing.
Yeah.
You know, I was expecting some esoteric
answer. Yeah. I was like, is that it?
But he said, but the problem is with most human beings is they don't really understand what makes them happy. And what makes a human being happy is helping other people.
Yes.
So I just thought, I love that. So that was number one. Then, of course, I would like to have dinner with Samuel Hahnemann, the founder of homeopathy, because all that 40 years of work that he did experimenting, he was completely tireless. He kept all the records. You know, he wrote 6 editions of the Organon, which is the main kind of body of work around homeopathy. And I just think he was an amazing man. So I would love to meet him. And then my last person has to be a woman, which will be Meryl Streep. There's just something about Meryl Streep that I love. She's not only an amazing actress, but I love when she's interviewed, the way she laughs, and the fact that she's all about female empowerment. So she does a lot to support causes around female empowerment. So I love Meryl Streep.
That is fabulous. And if you're going to have what about if I'm just going to throw this one, a complete curveball, if you were to have a bonus guest just for you to have literally a one-to-one, just someone that you just thought, you know what, for whatever reason, just a bonus guest. They don't need to complement the three. Could you think of anyone as a bonus guest?
I think someone called Ricardo Semler.
Okay.
So he inherited his Brazilian businessman.
Yeah.
He inherited his father's manufacturing business, which was run very traditionally. I think it was something like the 70s or the 80s. And he completely transformed it. And he really pioneered, and he still is right at the cutting edge of employee-friendly, radical corporate democracy. So he implemented this as a CEO and Semco partners, and he's been doing that for 20 years. And he believes if we simply ask why we do things and we devolve power to employees, we're able to create wiser companies and ones that simultaneously are more productive with a happier workforce.
That's brilliant. I'm going to go look him up.
When I worked as a consultant, an organizational consultant, he was kind of one of my heroes. And that was, I worked in a firm that was about working with those principles and devolving power and getting people more involved and collaborative.
Which is brilliant, because that's effectively what you're doing anyway now, isn't it? You're getting people more involved with who they are and, taking back the power. And that's what menopause is about, really, isn't it? Feeling like you're powerless and taking back the power.
And also, homeopathy in itself is very like that, because it's not the homeopathic pill that does the healing. It stimulates your system to do the healing. So it's empowering your system to heal you in the best way, in the wisest way possible, because it just knows what is best for you.
That's fantastic. I love questions like that come full circle.
Yes.
So when we do think about further than ourselves, which is what the spirit of giving is all about, and the concepts of paying it forward and being the best version of ourselves to assist other people to be the best version of themselves, what do you think the world needs more of right now, and why?
I think a couple of things, lots of things, but I've just picked two.
Great.
So one is the feminine. Now, when I say the feminine, I mean it as an energy. So because both men and women have masculine principle and feminine principle in them. And for many years, masculine principle has overshadowed the feminine principle. And I think if we had more of the feminine principle that is intuitive, it's collaborative, it's compassionate, and it's all about connection, I think the planet would get looked after better. Because my highest value, which I didn't mention, is it's all about connection for me.
Okay.
Whether it be connection with yourself, connection with each other, it's all about connection. So the feminine. And then it's a bit boring, but I really do think we need more proper democracy. Okay. I think if you take America, it's not really a democracy any longer. The way their politics and ours, but not quite the same degree, the way politics is funded, it means that big business a lot of the time is calling the shots, not the people. So, slightly controversial one there.
No, I love it. A colleague of mine, Stuart Carroll, and I both really very vocal about mental health advocacy, and one of the things that we feel is that actually things like the democracy for mental health is non-existent, because it falls under a banner of HR usually, and we would champion, we're going to have a guest coming on, that basically actually mental health should be a standalone function, because
that's a great idea.
Because that way, then it's really accountable, isn't it? It's Absolutely. Like you have to stand it up. And in fact, another colleague, a lady who was on here, Lindsay Sharrett, there's actually an ISO certification which is all around the human investment. So companies that really want to show up and say, yes, we're really looking after our people, which, by the way, represents 70% of all expenditure in an organisation, then that's where you've got to put your money where your mouth is, really. So I am really hoping a lot of people are going to start taking seriously. If you really want to attract top talent, keep top talent, make them feel valued, that's where the power comes then in an organisation.
Absolutely. My husband would agree with you very strongly, considering, because he treats a lot of people as a psychologist in the kind of the big corporates.
Yeah, so absolutely. And I think we should be talking about proper democracy, not fluffy ideas that never sort of translate into anything. Actually, let's talk about it, what it properly means.
Yes.
And giving people a voice, and that optimism, that hope that actually, you know, we all can make the best of things if we all have the right opportunities. I read Michelle Obama's book, which I would recommend to
Okay.
anybody.
Going to be on my Christmas list then.
My goodness, when you think about, she's probably the third generation on from slaves brought to America.
Wow.
And ended up in the White House, and in her own right is a phenomenal lawyer. And what she does for social democracy, I don't think gets talked about enough. So I'm with you completely. So that's brilliant. And then to finish with, then goes quick the time, doesn't it? To finish with, what's in store for you, Sarah, with your organisation? You know, what's the dream that's just over there, or the goals that you're working towards in the next 5
Well,
10 years?
I'm literally just about to launch my first Natural Menopause Transformation Programme, which I'm really excited about, in the new year.
Fabulous.
Which is basically, it's a blended programme that involves one-to-one homeopathic treatment. I mentioned some of it earlier, I think, the hormone testing with the customised nutritional plan, and then online support group of small group of women, so that you can get that connection, so that women feel less lonely with it.
Yeah.
And then also online education across all sorts of topics that I mentioned earlier, like you know, nutrition, exercise, sexuality, mindset, mindfulness, that kind of thing. So that's then beyond that, I think I would like to go into retreats.
Wonderful.
So that women get into a place where they don't have to deal with the outside world while they're focusing on this transformation that is going on, you know, is being powered by menopause.
Yeah, that's fantastic, because I love that idea of retreats, because we all know ourselves, you know, like the first day when you get on holiday, you know, your mind's still buzzing, isn't it? And retreats give that capacity for you to go, okay, mobile phone off.
Absolutely. And then the last thing is working with corporates, which I'm starting to do. So going into corporates, because of my history as a trainer and a facilitator, I'm very used to working in big corporates. So running interventions and programs and talks and workshops for corporates around menopause, because, you know, such a large, the women 50 plus is the fastest growing sector of the workforce.
Yes.
And all that experience, and so many women are, you know, going sideways or leaving, or, you know, they just can't cope. And I personally think that menopause is one of the major reasons why there are so few women on boards.
I would agree.
As you're about to get there, for many women, menopause will knock them sideways, and particularly in big stressful corporate jobs, because stress is one of the highest exacerbating factors for menopause symptoms.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a colleague in Sweden who works with women going through the menopause, and she said, actually, sadly, what then the trend is noticing that although we talk about suicide being highest in the male category, actually that 50 plus group also is experiencing an increased trend in suicide.
Really?
Yeah, so it's really, we need to be paying attention, because actually we need first of all to be looking after these individuals. The capability is there, and this is a transition, okay? So in any transition, we just need to be patient, we need to be kind, we need to be supportive, because actually, do we really want to lose talent like that? The answer is no, we absolutely don't.
Absolutely. And corporates need to wake up to the fact that the average amount of time that a woman who gets symptoms, which is 81% of us, have symptoms for, is 8 years.
Yeah. If you're lucky, Sarah, if you're lucky, it's just 8 years.
Yeah. I mean, there are some women who don't get symptoms at all. I've met them, lucky things.
Yeah, exactly.
But, you know, especially those of us that are super stressed, or, you know, have other things going on, a liver may not be in great shape, or a gut or a thyroid, that all impacts how you experience your menopause.
Definitely. Well, I look forward to hearing more about your programs, and you know, I'm sure this won't be the only conversation we have, and maybe when you're up and running with that, we get you back on and tell us all about how that's going. So as we bring this interview to a close, thank you so much for being a willing guest and coming on and talking and sharing and explaining, because I think half the battle here is actually people going, actually now I know what it is. now they
Yes.
would be more inclined to get in touch. And that's the purpose of
Yes.
these videos. So how can people be in touch with you, Sarah? What's the best way to contact you?
So I'm on LinkedIn, and if you also go to my website, www.thrivehomeopathy.com, thrivehomeopathy.com, and there's a contact button there, and you can find out all about my menopause programs and the work that I do there.
Yeah, no,
Or you
that's
can book yourself in for like no strings free discovery call. So yeah,
brilliant. That's brilliant.
it's
Well,
been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it.
oh,
Thank you,
thank you.
Amantha.
Thank you. And I know absolutely for a fact people will find this hugely helpful. Men, women, corporations as well, businesses. So yeah, thank you so much for your time. So from me to you, thank you very much. And we'll see
Great.
you again. Bye for
Thank
now.
you, Amantha. Take
Bye.
care. Bye.